Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to part 2 of the grey Suburban speed build. I hope you're all sitting comfortably because this is quite a long one. So we're starting things off in the hallway here, and you'll see to begin with, at this stage, I'm trying to keep everything quite white and quite neutral, just to keep in line with the outside of the build really. But as I add more rooms to the house, I kind of get a bit braver with the colours that I introduce, and I introduce more as each room goes on and on. The last room that I add to the build is the toddler's room, which is actually my favourite room, but it's also the most colourful and the most cluttered, so it kind of goes from keeping all the rooms as neutral and pristine looking as possible, and that all changes when I move on to the bedroom areas, which look completely different to the downstairs of the build. So I'm just adding some exposed bricks to the hallway because that's one of my favourite features in all kinds of builds, is a bit of exposed brick. So I always try and get that in there somewhere. And the other thing I like is houseplants, but I'm sure I'm not alone in that because I think all simmers like to bring in houseplants whenever they can really. So just add in a few more clutter items just to make it look a bit more lived in, because I always like my houses to look like someone actually lives there as opposed to just an empty build. Now I know that might sound stupid, but it makes sense in my head. But I basically like it to look as if someone's been living here for a while rather than just a brand new pristine empty place. Obviously it depends on the build, but for this one I wanted it to look like someone actually lives here. Now I really like that little area under the stairs because I didn't really know what to do with it, so I thought I'll make that a nice cute little area for the little family dog or something. So we're moving on to the bathroom now, and this style of bathroom is fairly standard for my builds. I tend to use the spa day items in a lot of bathrooms just because I really like them, and I know the spa day, it doesn't get a lot of hate, but it's not exactly one of the most popular packs that's ever been released, but I actually really like it. It's actually one of my favourite ones. One, because of the items, and two, because I actually think the gameplay is quite good in it. I just think it's nice to have another community lot option for Sims to go to. But yeah, as I was building this, I really wanted to have a full-on bathroom downstairs, and I'm not really sure why, and I really wanted it to be right in the middle of the build with all the other rooms going around it, and I don't really know what gave me that idea, and I'm looking at it now thinking it would actually have been so much easier if that wasn't in the build at all, because the living room area and the dining room area took me a long time to work out the layout of the furniture, and I think if I just had that tiny bit more space it would have just been so much easier. But you can see the lights I'm putting in there along with a lot of the lights in the build. So as I'm building it, you'll probably look at it and think all these lights look quite dark and quite yellow, which I think can work in some rooms, but you don't really want it around the entire house. But I did go back and tweak it all, so I do a little fly through at the end, and that shows how much brighter and whiter all the lights are throughout the entire build. Now I did skip through a bit of the deciding the layout for the lounge here because it just took quite a long time, and it's not exactly the most exciting area of the build, but I think it's nice. It's quite cozy with the curtains and the rug and all the cushions lying around, and you can see I'm trying to keep things fairly neutral still, so it's still very light. I did try going a bit darker with all the furniture, and then in the end I decided to go for a bit of a mixture between the two. So you'll just see here I bring in a lot more greys and blacks, but I didn't want the entire area to end up being too dark. So again, I'm just adding quite a few clutter items here. I try and move them around a bit so that they're not just slotted to the usual slots, just to make it look a bit more varied and just to stop the objects looking a bit too uniform. I also changed the TV around quite a lot because there were ones which are like the right size but completely the wrong style, and then vice versa. So yeah, I think I got through like 6 different TVs while I was building this. But you'll see I've just brought in a bit of the beige wall in the background on that back wall, just to bring a a bit of colour in, but I still wanted to keep it fairly neutral, and then I'm just adding more pot plants to bring in a bit more greenery to the room. But as I said in part 1, like if you're ever in doubt on what to do with the outside of a build, just throw more plants at it. And I also think that's true for the inside, so if there's ever a space, I'm usually just put a plant there and it's fine. And I was going to say it was just a thing for The Sims, but I've kind of found myself doing it in real life as well. But that's something I actually tend to do, is I'll use The Sims as like a tool for redecorating in real life. So I've done it with my room at home several times. I've done it with other rooms around the house. I've done it to friends' rooms. And everyone kind of gives me a weird look, as if to say, what what are you on about, when I say, oh, I can build that in The Sims and see what it looks like. And they always kind of think I'm a bit strange for saying it, but then I'll show it to them and they're like, this is actually such a good idea. So I highly recommend it. If you're ever stuck for what to do in real life, just try building it on The Sims, and it's just a good way to visualise it. So I'm just adding a few more shelves and clutter items just to fill in like the empty spaces a bit more. Now you'll see that wall on the right hand side around the corner. Now I do add some mirrors in there. I haven't actually shown it in the build, but you'll see it on the final fly through at the end. But I was actually so pleased with how they turned out, because I was looking at that part of the wall thinking I just didn't know what to do with it. And then I put some mirrors on, and then I sized down some lights and slotted them down the edges of the mirrors to make it look like they were built into the mirrors, and it actually looked so good in the end. So you have to keep an eye out for that when I do the fly through. But I'm just adding the lights here, and you can kind of see what I mean about it still looking quite dark. So yeah, don't worry, I have gone round just to fix that up a little bit. So I'm just adding a few more candles just to try and brighten it up at this stage, but it obviously just needs a few more actual light bulbs in there. They're not the mirrors as well, by the way, on that edge. I do change those. I'm just putting the final touches on the room now, really, and then we're moving on to the dining area. So the dining area, I wanted to keep it fairly in keeping with the rest of the downstairs so that it flows through from the lounge. I did try bringing in a few different colours, but in the end I settled mainly for the black and white look still, just because I thought it helped keep it looking quite sophisticated. So you'll see I just add in this print here, and I really like the print and I really like the colour it brought in, so then I thought maybe I can bring some green in here, which doesn't really look too bad, but I just didn't think it really flowed from the other rooms very well. So I do change that back. Now there's not really much I can really say about the dining room, because I always find dining rooms are just kind of fairly standard. There's not really much that I can add to them to make them that exciting really. But I think the dining room in this build is also limited by the size of it. So like I said earlier, the bathroom kind of limits it, but if you were to just pull that wall back, you could probably pop a full-sized bar in there or something to make it a bit more interesting if you wanted to. But I've just gone for the smaller globe bar because I just thought it helped keep the sophisticated look, and this is a family home at the end of the day. I think a full-on bar might look a bit strange in there. So I'm just adding in some lamps that are the same as the ones in the lounge, just to help bring it through again, to help everything flow. And then just an extra little chair just to fill in the space at the end there. And again, you'll probably think as I start doing the lights here that it looks quite dark again, and I think although it does look quite like atmospheric, it's not exactly the best for gameplay. So again, I do go back and replace these lights with brighter ones. But then again, it does look quite nice and moody, so you can always change those back to those ones if you like how it looks on here. Now the kitchen I really like. I'm using the counters from the Cool Kitchen stuff pack. I'm trying to keep it all very white and grey and neutral, just to tie it in with the hallway, just so it flows through nicely to the dining area. Again, it's quite limited on space, so like I said in part 1, this house was originally intended to be a lot smaller, so I was trying not to go overboard, but I do kind of feel like all of the rooms could be improved upon a bit just by making them all a tiny bit bigger, just to give a bit more space. So I've added the circular counters just to the middle of the room, just to give another more casual seating area. So I also think it gives the kitchen quite a nice communal feel to it. So you can imagine Sims coming downstairs like in the mornings just to grab a quick breakfast and then quickly get out the door, rather than sitting at the dining table. Well, I say that, but that's if you can get Sims to actually sit down and eat at all. I prefer just to give them snacks because it fills up their hunger bar. I don't know if there's any actual advantage to eating proper meals as opposed to snacks, other than maybe a few moodlets. It's been a while since I've actually played in live mode, to be honest, because I mainly just build nowadays. And one of the things I love doing when building, for some reason, is I just love cluttering up the kitchen counters. I feel like looking at it now, it just looks so empty, and all you have to do is throw on a few random items just to make it look like people are actually living here, and it just makes it look so much better. But again, I'm keeping everything quite neutral at this stage. I do bring in a bit of purple into this room actually later on, but then I found getting curtains to match anything in the rest of the build is just such a mission. But I did pick some in the end. They don't perfectly match the stools because I had some bar stools now to the kitchen counter, but there's no curtains to match the same purple, which was quite annoying because I wanted to bring a little bit of colour into this room just because it's looking very monotone. But at this stage you can just see I'm just bringing in more variation in the wall textures and the colours on the walls, just because that's the other thing that I think really helps make rooms look more interesting, is just getting different textures on different walls. So a lot of the time I'll use 2 textures per room, but I think you can get away with 3 and sometimes maybe more, but it really depends on the room, and it is easy to get carried away and go overboard. So I usually just stick to 2 or 3. So here I just start adding the final appliances to the kitchen, and you'll see I try and put a microwave in here, but I just didn't know where to put it because it has to be slotted to an actual countertop. It's just a bit annoying. And the other thing was I didn't really know what to do with this corner. So I was trying to put different items there, and in the end I decided on that nice full-length cupboard with a smaller worktop coming off the side of it, and then I also slot a bin just in that corner just to help make the kitchen look a bit more finished off. And then I didn't know where to put the food bowls, and I thought, why not just put all of the dog stuff underneath the stairs together, and then all its needs are there sorted. And that's pretty much the kitchen finished. I'll just add some lights. I put in some under counter lights, which I really like doing as well, because I think it's something that you don't really notice that they're there, but they really change the feel of the kitchen, and I think it just is a really good way of making it look nice and finished off. But I also think it makes it look a bit more interesting than just having ceiling lights or wall lights. So that's pretty much the kitchen sorted. I'm just adding a few more last lights in there, and then I also try and bring in another bit of colour just on this wall. So you'll see I'm really liking the darkness of the build at this point, but I end up going for one of the lighter ones there. So now we're moving on to this nice little laundry room tucked away at the back of the house. Now I personally am not actually a fan of laundry gameplay. I just don't see any fun in it, but I can appreciate that it adds realism to the game, and in a life simulator that is really what you want. And it does look nice in a build. I just don't like doing the washing, but who does really? And again, there's not really a huge amount I can say about this room. It's just a fairly standard laundry room. I just try and keep it tying in with the rest of the build and looking nice, light and neutral. So that's a fairly quick room. I'm just putting a final little plant in there to look finished off. And now we move on to the study area, and this is where the style starts getting switched up a bit. So I wanted this room to reflect the Sims' personalities a bit more who are living here. I didn't want it to just blend in with the rest of the build. So this is a space where they can come in and get away from the rest of the build and really get creative. So I've gone for the more bold reds and blacks with the wooden flooring in this one, just to make the whole room pop a bit more and make it stand out from the rest of the build. But I also wanted to keep it looking quite stylish, so I'm picturing the family that lives here I picture to be quite a young family, and I wanted to reflect that in the style of this room. But you'll see for quite a small space it's got a lot of skill building items in it. So it's got the computer and the bookshelves in there, but it's also got the easel, the guitar, and it's got a dartboard, but I can't remember if there's a skill involved in that actually. But if not, it's just quite a cool area for Sims to come and hang out in if you've got like a club or something. There's plenty of stuff to do in this little room. But talking of clubs, I think that's actually one of my favourite features that The Sims 4 has introduced to the series. I remember when the trailer was first released for Get Together, and I was thinking, what is this pack? I couldn't even get my head around what it was. They were just kind of like, get together, and I was thinking like, well, Sims can do that anyway, why do we need a pack based around that? But the actual clubs feature is so useful. One of my favourite things to do with it is just to create like a family group. So when you have like extended family, just add everyone to that, and then boom, one click, the entire family's round for a big gathering. And I just think that's such a good feature to bring to the game. So I'm adding some lights in here now, and you'll notice I actually keep it quite dark in this room, just because I wanted to keep it a bit more like mood lighting as opposed to just lighting it all up to see everything, if that makes sense. Just because I thought it helps give this room a bit more of a creative vibe really. So that's the downstairs of the build pretty much sorted. So now we're moving on to upstairs, and I'm pretty much just copying and pasting the style of the downstairs hallway to the upstairs just to keep it flowing nicely. So again, I wanted to keep the more communal areas of the build quite white and neutral. There's not really anything major going on in this room, it's just a hallway. But yeah, my usual style of building, I do tend to build suburban builds like this one quite a lot, just because it's kind of like the go-to thing that I think of when I think of Sims houses. But I'd say my favourite type of house to build is actually industrial style lots. So another video that I'm currently working on is an industrial style loft penthouse in San Myshuno, and I'm really pleased with how it's turned out, so I'm really excited to share that one. But I do suburban builds quite a lot. I am trying to change it up a bit. I've got a few build challenges in mind that I want to try doing, and I've also thought of a couple of ones that I haven't actually seen before, so I'm quite interested to see what you guys think of it. But we're moving on to the master bedroom now, and this took me a long time to decide on the style because again I was trying to keep it quite white, but I really wasn't feeling it, and I was trying all sorts of different furniture in this room and I did not know what to do. So it ended up just looking like a hotel room a lot of the time, which really isn't the vibe that I was going for. As much as I would love hotels in The Sims 4, that isn't what I wanted here. But I am pleased with how it turned out in the end. You'll see it's got that nice ensuite tucked away at the back, so I basically just copied and pasted the bathroom from downstairs, because although I like building bathrooms, it does get quite tedious just building bathroom after bathroom, especially as this house has 3 bathrooms. I don't actually show the third main bathroom in this build because it is just the same as the other 2. So I've just copied them, pasted them and tweaked them a little bit, rather than build a whole new one from scratch every single time. So at this stage I'm still trying to work out what furniture I want to put where, and also I was trying to decide whether I wanted it to be this dark, because the rest of the room is so light. I thought it might look a bit jarring if this one room is just so dark, but I think it actually works quite well in here and helps it look sophisticated. So I'm just adding some more lights underneath the bed here, a bit like the kitchen counters. I just think it makes it look a bit cool and it adds a bit more light to the room. And I'm also adding these lights, so I size those down and just add them to the back wall just to make it a bit more of a feature wall, make it look quite cool. So they don't give off a huge amount of light, but it is just like a nice subtle glow. And I think it helps give the room a sophisticated adult vibe compared to the other bedrooms. Now again, like with the lounge, this room took me a lot of tweaking, so I haven't shown the whole thing. but the area opposite the bed is the area that I was really struggling to know what to do with, because it just ended up looking like a hotel room with whatever I put there. But I ended up putting one of the wall dividers with the candles on. I think it might be from Spa Day, but I'm not sure. With mirrors behind it, and it looks really nice. So you won't see it on this part, but again it'll be on the fly through. And there's also a balcony coming off the master bedroom with a few yoga mats and stuff out there, which is also on the fly through. But yeah, now we're moving on to the teenagers room, and this is actually one of my favourite parts of the build as well. I'm really pleased with how this end of the room turned out, because I didn't want it to just look like a standard square box room. So I added the diagonal walls in with curtains on, just to kind of give an illusion that the window wraps around the end of the room like that. But it's actually got a mirror one side and the tucked away bookshelves the other. And I think that gives it a really cool, like, teenage vibe. I also wanted to bring in a bit more colour with this room, so I didn't want it to just be black and white like the rest of the build, but I didn't want it to be too much. So I've gone for a more subtle pastel-y pink as opposed to a brighter one. But the other thing that I'm looking at as I'm watching this speed build is, I wish Snowy Escape was out so that I could use the platforming tool just on the edge, on the end of the room where the chair is, just to get a bit of variation and make it look a bit cooler in there. Now, I always enjoy making kids and teenagers rooms more than adult rooms in The Sims, just because I feel like you can reflect their personalities a lot more with the objects in there. And that's what I've tried to go for with both of the kids' rooms in this build. So I think this room really gives off like cool teenage vibes as opposed to just like a standard adult bedroom. Now, I really like this little bookshelf area at the back of the room. As I started building it, I was thinking, I'm not sure how this bit's going to look. Is it going to look a bit strange tucked away at the back there? But I actually really like how it turned out. And that is something that I try and do with my builds, is usually, like, if not per room, but there's usually an aspect of the build where I'll try and add something in that isn't just like a typical build or something that you'd normally see. So I'll try and like manipulate the objects using cheats and stuff just to make it look a bit more interesting. Now I'm just adding the final few objects in here just to try and soften the room up a bit more, because I know I've got all the curtains around the edge, but I just find pink and white is quite a cold colour scheme in my opinion. So I just feel like I need to add a few softer things in there just to make the room look a bit cozier. And now we move on to the smallest room in the build, but it's also my favourite room and I think it has the most personality to it. So this is the toddler's room, and to begin with I was trying to go for like sophistication but also loads of colour in there. So I was trying to add little like small pops of colour around the room just to brighten it up a bit, but it quickly changes and it kind of reminds me of Toy Story in that there's just so much colour in there, and it's kind of like my dream toddler room. Like if I was a toddler again, this is the kind of room that I would like. So there's just toys everywhere, it's really colourful. You can see I'm starting to add more colour in here. Like every colour, there's not even just a specific scheme going on. Like there's a lot of yellow, but there's also a lot of blue, orange, just every colour really. It's almost like all of the colour that could have been in the hallway and the lounge and the entire rest of the build has been condensed down into this one tiny space. But I think it really works, and it's definitely my favourite room of the build, even though it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the build at all, but I think that's why I like it. So it's got the potty in there, it's got toys in there so they can develop their skills. I haven't actually put a high chair anywhere in the build because to begin with I wasn't planning on having a toddler's room in here, and I did just forget. But as I remembered as I was building, I kind of thought I never actually use the high chairs because they never work properly, so I'd rather just feed them on the floor. Which is terrible parenting, but in The Sims it works. So similar situation to the snacking really. So I'm just adding loads and loads more clutter items just to make the room look really fun. I just wanted to get this dinosaur in here somewhere, but it was absolutely huge, so I thought I'll have to size that down and just put him in the corner. And that's that done. So we're now moving on to outside with the patio. Perfect Patio is another one of my favourites, and I feel like I see a lot of bad comments about that pack. I feel like it's probably because it was one of the earlier packs, so there isn't a huge amount of items in there, but they're actually some of my favourite items in the game. So whenever I build a patio on a lot, there's a very high chance that I'll use the Perfect Patio stuff, just because it just seems to go with anything, and there's also a lot of nice colour swatches for it. So I've kept it as black and white in this build, but I do actually vary it in a lot of other builds that I do. Now the other thing that I'm doing here, you're probably thinking it's a bit strange because it's not usable, but I just find the chairs look so strange when they're not tucked under the table, and they take up so much space, and I think that doesn't look realistic at all, so I've just tucked those under. And I did actually do that with the dining table indoors as well, so if you download this from the gallery, you will have to just replace the chairs around the table if you want your Sims to sit there, but I just find it looks better with them tucked under. Well, that was my thinking, and then I moved it over to the other side of the deck, and I thought I don't actually need to tuck them under because it doesn't need that much space around the table. So yeah, this is almost the end of the build now, so it's coming up to the fly through where I'll just move around each of the rooms individually, and you can get a really good understanding of the size and space of each room. So that is everything. If you've enjoyed this video and you like the build, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. So you can find this lot and loads of other lots that I've built on the gallery, and I also upload details of them to Instagram, so if you're interested in those, I'll put links down in the description below, and I'll catch you all next time.